morning. Yeah. Okay. It is my great pleasure to make a short presentation this morning, especially after the very impressive congratulatory remarks from former Secretary General of the United Nations, Mr. Ban Ki-moon, about the importance of carbon neutrality. I am working as a member of the National Council on Climate and Air Quality, and I was a climate change ambassador for Korea, and I was also working for UN ESCAP as a director for Environment Development Division, and I have been pioneering the idea of green growth from 2005, and I have worked for 10 years to disseminate the idea of virtuous cycle between environment and economy, which was mentioned by Mr. Ban Ki-moon this morning in his congratulatory remark. So it is my great honor and pleasure, especially after the yesterday's special climate summit hosted by the United States, President Mr. Biden. And we heard more than 27 head of states yesterday making new special commitments and pledges for their national contribution for carbon neutrality. It is very heartening to see that finally all the global leaders are joining their forces to work together for respond to the climate crisis. Today, my presentation will focus on what is the fundamental reason why we are facing climate change today. I don't think I want to emphasize that climate change is not just a matter of rising temperature. Many people think that this is a kind of a weather event or atmospheric issues. But in fact, we have to understand why the climate change is happening. From my own interpretation, the fundamental reason why climate change is happening is because the economic system, in other words, the market economy, where our economy and society is operating, is not paying the right price for carbon. We are emitting CO2 without paying the price of climate change because the market we are operating is not reflecting and internalizing the cost of carbon emission. This is why we have been emitting CO2 without any kind of restriction and limit. This has been the basic reason. So I was saying that this is a sign of failure of a conventional knowledge, economic and social system. So climate change is just one of the symptoms of the failure of conventional economic system. In other words, climate change is not the only problem. We are having COVID-19, which is another very serious problem. Why I am speaking with my mask, facial mask now. So COVID-19 is also one of the symptoms or challenges we are facing because of the failure of the conventional economic system that's not paying the price for ecological prices we are exploiting. So we have to understand that this is not just a matter of rising temperature. It's a failure of conventional knowledge, economic and social system. Here, what I mean by knowledge, the conventional knowledge, which means, in other words, is a market economy. And another knowledge is, as Mr. Ban Ki-moon mentioned just moments earlier, that we have been believing that paying the price for climate change and the investing in environment and the investing in climate action is a cost and a burden, and it will damage our economic growth. That was a knowledge we have been believing. The former US President Trump was a classical example who showed that, who has a strong conviction, investing in climate change will damage American economy. This is why President Trump decided to withdraw from Paris Agreement. So this is a conventional knowledge. What I mean by conventional knowledge. But many people are now emphasizing and realizing that investing in climate change is not just a burden and cost or damaging our economy. Many people have been saying finally, they are saying that climate change can be an opportunity, new opportunity for new economic growth and job creation. In fact, that was the idea I was proposing since 2005. That was the essence of the idea of green economic growth, which I was proposing since 2005. So in the face of those failure of conventional knowledge, economic and social system, many new paradigm has been proposed. One of the example is a sustainable development. Sustainable development has been proposed in 1992 in Rio Earth Summit. At that time, I attended myself, and the sustainable development idea has been proposed finally. The basic idea was that we cannot just pursue economic development. We have to balance economic development with environmental protection and social development as well. So the three pillars has to be in balance and harmonized. That was the idea of sustainable development. And then later, in 2005, when I was in UNESCO, I proposed the idea of green economic growth, which is the idea of investing in green, which means climate can be a driver of clean economic growth. And then later, in 2010, UNEP proposed green economy. And in 2015, we have been seeing that a new report is coming up. New climate economy report is coming up by a new foundation. So, and this new climate economy report has been saying that climate change, in fact, is not just a burden and cost, but it's going to be a new opportunity for economic growth. So the idea, my idea that I have been emphasizing since 2005, finally has been echoed by world global economists around the world, and they are coming up with this kind of report. And then 2010, when there was a financial crisis in 2008, and then Green New Deal idea came up with the British Prime Minister Gordon Brown. So Green New Deal came up in 2010. At that time, Green New Deal was proposed not as a strong action to address climate change, but rather upside down, which means it was proposed to save the global economy, which has been suffering from financial crisis in 2008. So in order to save the global economy, Prime Minister of UK, Gordon Brown, proposed to invest in climate change, to save the global economy, not just to protect the climate change. So this was the origin of global Green New Deal. And then later, 9 years later, 2 years ago, European Union proposed a Green Deal as a new approach for climate change. And then later, Net Zero 2050 idea came up with the IPCC report in 2018. And then later, last year actually, European Union, USA, Korea, China, Japan, these countries are coming up with a new commitment for net zero by 2050. And then another new paradigm is proposed, is carbon neutrality. Carbon neutrality is a topic of our conference today. Then the question is, carbon neutrality, of course, it sounds nice and it is a great vision and we have to pursue it. But the question is, do we know how we can achieve it or whether it is really feasible? This is the big questions we have to address. And actually, this is why we are having this conference, to pool our wisdom, to work together, to realize the vision of carbon neutrality. Then, before I just focus on carbon neutrality as a specific agenda item, I think we have to look at the carbon neutrality from the broader perspective of sustainable development. Because for me, carbon neutrality is just one of the implementing strategy of sustainable development. Sustainable development is our ultimate goal. The balancing economy, environment, and society. So sustainable development is an overarching goal. Carbon neutrality is one of the implementing strategy to harmonize and balance the three pillars. So I would like to focus on what has been done on sustainable development. As I said earlier, the sustainable development means we have to shift away from economic growth first towards balancing economic prosperity, social development, and environmental protection. And the issue is, even though we have adopted in 2015, we SDG. I didn't mention it here, but SDG is, many of you know, Sustainable Development Goal is a global goal to be achieved until 2030. It was unanimously adopted in United Nations in 2015 as a global goal. But this global goal, Sustainable Development Goal, has been adopted by UN, but still, we do not know how we can achieve the sustainable development. We know that we have to balance economy, society, and environment, but we actually don't know how we can balance it, or is it really possible, and we don't know about it. And so in order to find a solution, then we have to find a fundamental dynamics between economy, society, and environment pillar. There are three pillars. And the three pillars has to be in harmony and in balanced pursuit. And so I have to show you how we can balance those three pillars. The current economic paradigm of the market economy is that it's a vicious cycle. We are in a bad cycle where we are trying to exploit human capital and natural capital by paying minimum wage. So human capital means labor. Natural capital means energy. And we are paying the least price for energy and the least minimum wage for human capital and labor. So this is, we are exploiting human and natural capital. Actually, by exploiting human and natural capital, our economy is suffering, society is suffering, and our environment is suffering. We have to move towards a new paradigm, new virtuous cycle, which is a good cycle. We're investing in human capital and natural capital. So we have to invest and to pay higher price for our energy, and we have to pay a higher wage for our labor, which is, in other words, is investing. So if we invest in human capital, labor productivity will go up. If we pay a higher price for energy, then our resource efficiency will go up. And this will stimulate higher economic growth. So this is going to be a good cycle, the virtuous cycle, which was mentioned by Mr. Ban Ki-moon in his remarks. So if we can pursue investing in human capital, I call it inclusive growth. And investing in natural capital is ecological growth, which is green growth. In fact, the catchphrase of World Bank is inclusive and green growth. So it was the UNESCO that initiated green growth first. Later, even World Bank adopted inclusive and green growth as a strategy for sustainable development. But the essence of moving from bad cycle to good cycle is that we have to shift away from short-termism to long-termism. Climate change and social development or COVID-19. These are the issues for long-term goals. But the current economic paradigm of market economy is that we have to maximize our GDP, short-term production. So we are always focusing on short-term quantity maximization of GDP at the expense of human and natural capital. This is the problem of the current situation. So we have to move from short-termism towards a long-termism, which is new paradigm, long-term quality of GDP, not quantity of GDP, by investing in human and natural capital. This is sustainable development. So what I'm saying is that it's not just a matter of money and technology. Many people think that it's just a matter of money and technology, but I want to emphasize that it is actually a matter of policy. Without proper policy, the money and technology will not flow for our carbon neutrality. Since the time is running out, I will go a little faster. What are the elements of transformation? These are the elements of transformation, which I mean by that is that industrial revolution powered by coal, oil, electricity, internet happened automatically by market and technology. But carbon neutrality revolution will not happen automatically. It has to be pushed by the government leadership. Without government leadership, I don't think we can make such a transformation. And what are the drivers? I think this is a very important point. The government has to jumpstart system change, investing in long-term goals. The market cannot invest in long-term goals. Political leadership, commitment critical, and the support from business and people also necessary. But in order to make this kind of commitment happen, I think the conviction that investing in long-term goal, sustainable development goal, will deliver higher economic growth in the long run. I think this kind of conviction is necessary. Without such a conviction, I think it is impossible to shift away from short-term to long-term investment. So finally, I've been proposing as a strategy for carbon neutrality, I've been proposing these 5 tracks. Number 1, we have to shift away from quantity to quality of growth. Second, align invisible structure, e.g. fiscal policy, regulation, and redesign our infrastructure, urban planning, promote green business, and mainstreaming low carbon development into our national development strategy. These are the 5 tracks for transformation towards a carbon neutrality. Thank you for your attention.